In this video, we'll be talking about Motorlist coordination between mechanical and electrical. So we have made great strides in that process. The biggest advantage is being in a shared combined MEP model. If your firm is able to do that, and not everyone is, there's many reasons why you wouldn't be able to, but if you are, your whole process and workflow is able to be streamlined, eliminating all the duplicate data sets that have to reside in separate models. We have a process set up where electrical can circuit the mechanical equipment families and have all of their information in those families for them to use for their electrical load calculations and coordination. So then electrical doesn't have to hunt down equipment motor locations. They're already showing up on their plans, and they just have to tag the information and circuit them. So as history would show, mechanical has always been responsible with producing a motor list for electrical. Essentially mechanical has to say, hey, I have this equipment and I need you to power it. And, a lot of times firms have always used Excel to do that, which has been a great tool in the past. But now, since we're able to do everything in Revit, it's just much more streamlined. So I'll be showing you how to set up the motor list in this shared MEP model, which then will be used by electrical for their coordination and circuiting. I have the quality control sheet opened up right now, and we have a mechanical version of the motor list placed, and there's multiple derivatives of this motor list schedule, and they each serve a different purpose. I made one for mechanical so that we can see when electrical has input their information and when they've circuited our equipment. So it's just one place we can go to know when they're done. All right, so to build this schedule. So first stop for mechanical is this M Design Motor List Equipment Review. This schedule right here. So we're, just to give you an idea of where we're at in our schedules, after components, down in design, here's some motor list schedules. Don't get confused with the electrical versions of the motor list schedules, which reside up here, E_motor list. So they have a couple different versions, and as well as a full broken out schedule for their load calculations for multi-motor equipment. All right, so let's go to our schedule for mechanical. And essentially we have to set this up, and then this is used on the electrical sheets. So in equipment review, there's a couple things that this schedule is doing. We have one parameter in all the families, and in most cases is already preset to have motor coordination or not, but it's this parameter right here. It's called include in motor list, and when it's checked, your family is going to be shown in the motor coordination schedule, as well as it's going to be shown on the power plans. So the electrical views, they have a filter applied that turns off all equipment, all mechanical equipment that doesn't have this checked. And maybe that's the first step back, is the first piece to simplify this coordination is anything from mechanical that needs power is mechanical equipment. All right, so reviewing this list, I see, okay, we got some pumps that for some reason don't have this box checked. So everything's flagged red. So we're going to check those, and they will move up to the upper part of the list. And we've got some VAV boxes here. So these are heating water reheat boxes. I'm going to leave them off the motor coordination form. Your firm can choose to do that separately. And when you guys bring in families from other manufacturers, we have a project parameter that adds this parameter by default. However, it comes in an undefined state, which unfortunately we can't control in Revit. So in cases like this family is not being included in the motor list. This happens to be an expansion tank, so I don't need it in the motor list, but I just wanted to show you the undefined state. So this parameter right here is what electrical is filtering their views by and what the motor coordination schedule is being filtered by. So it's an important parameter. So that's step one, is first determining what equipment we need to coordinate. So step two is just cleaning up this schedule. The description parameter, which is a type parameter, is how this schedule is kind of grouped. So for instance, we have a transfer fan up here. So let's give this a description. And then we have a DOAS unit family right here. So this is the mechanical equipment configurator that I've been playing around with in some of the other videos. So I'm actually going to turn this off for the time being. We won't include that in this motor coordination. All right, so we have our IDs, we have descriptions, and we have locations. And we talked about using the location schedule to update this. And maybe I'll quick highlight that again since we're right here. So it's a design schedule, equipment locations. These rooftop units, there's no space on the roof. So if we want this location name and number to be populated, we can check this box to use overrides. And then we can put in what we want here. I would put roof, but this is a superhero base, so we're calling this the helipad. And maybe we'll even put in a dash here. So I did show these equipment locations in a previous video, so this is a little bit redundant. Sorry for that. For those that haven't seen this video, I guess you get a freebie. And this is the ERV, so we'll fill in this location as well, which also resides on the roof. Okay, getting back to the motor coordination. All right, so we have all of our locations identified for electrical, and we have manufacturer model numbers. So now we need to fill out our quality control. So I set up a schedule which basically takes all the elements and removes itemizing so you can edit them all at once. So in this case, I'm editing this motor coordination schedule. And this is some imaginary day. I'm going to say 5 years ago. And now we have a cut sheet spot here that's really nice to provide electrical. It doesn't have to be used. However, it's very convenient for them to then get to your cut sheets to look at your different motor selections. So I've included a workflow to add your hyperlinks right here that they can then use. And the way that this works is I'm going to go to the folder where the cut sheets are. So I just have them on my desktop here. Here's some of the cut sheets. These are just PDFs to selections that I've done. This is the ERV selection. So I end up, maybe flagging some important items for electrical. It's not entirely important. You guys can do it however you want to do it. Like here's our water heater selection. So just flagging, exactly what you're using, I think is beneficial. If you're in my company, make sure you do this. If you're not in my company, do it how you want to do it. All right, so we want to get these hyperlinks into Revit without spending a whole lot of time doing that. So we have a batch process here, which was created for me by Sue Ali a couple years ago. Essentially, we're just going to copy this path and we're going to edit this file. So up here, there's some descriptions of what's going on. This is essentially the command line that the file does. It's a very simple little file that will generate a text file with all of your full paths. All you need to do is, long and short, you need to paste in the folder that this is located. So I'm going to paste in my folder path there. And I'm going to paste in my folder path here. And then this is the name of the text file that will be generated. So it's plain and simple. Anyone should be able to set this file up. There's no programming needed. We'll include this file with the mechanical productivity pack. And then you just click on it to run it. Okay, we generated a text file right here. And now we have a nice, simple, full path for the hyperlinks that we can paste in. So I'm not going to spend the time plugging all these in the video, but let's just do a couple just to show you how it works. Like the water heater, let's copy this one, come down to here. Here was that water heater. You just click and paste. So you can just paste in the values just like that. I'll do one more. All right, we'll do the ERV. Copy that. We'll come back to our file or to our model, and we will paste that in. All right, so sure, you probably have a folder location on your network, and you could just tell electrical, hey, here's where my cut sheets are. What I see over time is a lot of disorganization. People are horrible at keeping files up to date, especially when you talk about equipment selections with each phase, and then you've got all these old cut sheets. So I recommend having the Revit model maintain the latest selection, and then there's no confusion in regards to the folder of what's old, what's new. The model is always the most up to date. Let's just get that in our heads. The model is the most up to date. So then what electrical's able to do is they're able to select this hyperlink and pull up that selection right on the fly. So very beneficial to them, a little cost time to mechanical. So once we've filled in all of our cut sheets, we are going to go to the Motorlist. Now we talk about in the user manual the great strides that we've made in these families. So we have the NEC table 430 included in the families with motors, with fan motors, and ultimately to calculate loads we need amps. We need amps for all the components. So all of these motors, we're able to calculate amps from that NEC lookup table. The compressor motor, we're using running load amps to get those values. Electric heat, we've got the calculations to convert that to an ampacity based upon the voltage in phase. So that ultimately is what determines full load amps and minimum circuit ampacity, which then can be used to determine MOCP. So we are able to get electrical information a lot sooner, and then they can choose to use it or override it. But then they have the information up front. So just to show you how cool this is, so as mechanical starts filling in, this is information right from our schedules. So we've got 2 motors for this ERV. Let's say they're 1.5 horsepower. And then we've got 2 exhaust fan motors, and say these are 1 horsepower. So I don't know if you guys are paying attention, but as I'm doing this, the full load amps and the minimum circuit ampacity is going up. And in this case, we have an energy recovery wheel, so we've got a little small auxiliary motor. Let's say this one equals 1/3 horsepower. Okay, let's just do equals 1/3. There we go. So we're calculating all of these for electrical all the way to the point of that apparent load at that connector just by doing our own part and filling in our own information. Now say we also have electric preheat like our cut sheet indicated, and say we have a 15 kW heater in this, and now you'll see, magically all these values update. So are these exact values that should be used for rated packaged pieces of equipment with multiple motors? No, not necessarily. Ultimately, that's for the electrical engineer to determine. However, me as the mechanical person, I'm giving him information up front that he can use as starting information, and then once a final selection is made where he gets his rated values, then he can go and override those. So that, well, I guess a couple more things with this motor list. So you'd fill in all of your component information, and we have some other options in here in regards to the starter type and control type. So these are, oh, we've got a column that we need showing in this schedule. So under, we want to see the description, because essentially these are key schedules, and okay. All right, now with these two columns unhidden for you guys, essentially these are the key schedules. So for starter and control type, you have a handful of options. So these are predefined in these schedules, which I'll go to in a minute. And if you needed to add anything, you could add stuff from there. So if the starter is coming like an ECM motor, all of that's coming from the manufacturer. You could choose that. And then for control type, so let's see, this was our transfer fan. So it's a transfer fan ECM motor, and this is going to be controlled off of a thermostat. So yeah, you have a handful of options in here. Some stuff is specified by Division 23 or Division 26. That would be something that you'd want to coordinate with your electrical engineer. So with your motor list filled in, the last thing to do is to let electrical know. So if you go back to the quality control schedule, our last little checkbox is that one, which essentially says that you've made your first pass. Okay, that turns green. And now what electrical will see is that it's ready for their review. So if we go back to equipment review here, this is what electrical will see in their load calculation schedule. So now they know that, hey, we have selections, mechanical's gone in here, this guy, this BDG guy, he's filled in his information, and now we can do our circuiting and review the equipment selections. In their schedule up here in the load calculation schedule, you'll see a lot of the same columns there set up for them. So we have comments to electrical as well if you want to call out a specific page for them to refer to, or something about the motor or heating elements. You know, that's what this is for. This doesn't really end up anywhere on the construction documents. It's mainly just dialogue in the model. So that's the motor coordination in the MEPPP model.